this is the key, is to be open and to go into the world that you're in, but to trip through it in the way we do as people, trip through it quite lightly and with a sense of survival and a sense of nobility in kind of finding the joy despite the pain.
He's the quintessential clown.
He's a founding member of Propeller Shakespeare Ensemble.
He's marching into a new act as a writer and performer of his own solo show.
Tony Bell joins us from across the pond on today's episode.
My name is Nancy Magarill. I'm a singer, songwriter, composer, performer, graphic and web designer.
And I'm Peter Michael Marino, and I'm a writer, producer, creator, performer, and educator.
We are New York-based artists you may or may not have heard of.
And we are here to introduce you to other artists you may or may not have heard of.
Just before you came on, Pete and I were talking, and he had to do outdoor performing in the middle of a hill, and his voice is kind of a little craggly today. And I actually thought it would be interesting to talk to you because you've performed probably in a ton of venues, and you've been through the ages where we all learned how to project without using microphones. And now with microphones. I'm curious to know if you've learned any tricks of the trade and things that you do to help yourself when you're in those situations where you have to work without a microphone.
And it was outside.
Outside.
Yeah. I mean, it's weird, isn't it? Nowadays, everyone uses a mic at the National Theatre. Everyone's mic'd either really explicitly, where you can see the mic boxes and everything, or generically with the sort of overhead mics and stuff. But we never mic'd ourselves, even when we were playing like in Greece in the amphitheatre there. Is it Epidavros? We played there outdoors. We also, in Verona, we played a big open opera area, and we never mic'd ourselves. But I think I don't know if I could give you any hints, because really I just developed a sort of very hardened voice. I mean, I just developed through using my lungs. I mean, Ed used to say that I had a huge lung capacity, and I do remember when we used to do sports PE monitoring of our capacity as athletes, because I used to play a lot of sport, and I got breathalyzed, to find out what my lung capacity was, and it was very, very large. So I think I've just had really big lungs from playing a lot of sport, from doing running, cross-country running, rugby, football, and then from there going into acting. And I think I just naturally had a big voice. But I did sometimes overdo it, and I would black out sometimes. That I would use so much adrenaline and energy that I would sort of make myself dizzy. And,
yes, I have felt that as well.
Yeah.
It's something about, I feel like even if I know that the amphitheater in Greece is built for sound, that I still feel the need to push. But also that applies to me as a performer in general. So the fear of not being heard is so deep. I mean, it's so on so many levels.
It is. And I think this idea of like having to fill a big space and kind of pushing yourself outwards, it also applies to relating to an audience and how an audience perceives you as a performer. I mean, Grotowski, I've just read a quote that was on Facebook saying, Grotowski said that the play is irrelevant. It's just the interaction between the artist and the audience. It doesn't matter what they're doing. It's all about how they connect to an audience.
Oh, I love that quote.
I do too.
The material is vehicle.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is the show, it's a family show and it's extremely interactive. So I think that's exactly what it is that I am 1000%. It's all about connecting with the audience. Like the content of what I'm saying is the backseat.
Yeah.
So I wonder how to fix that. Maybe not do any shows outdoors anymore.
It's an interesting thing to think about when you're performing, your approach to it as well, because if you're thinking about yourself and your role, but forgetting about the audience, that sort of eliminates them from that adventure and doesn't pull them in. And I think that finding that balance is really interesting. I've never thought about it in that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, obviously for me it was key because obviously my role in Propeller. So my kind of, it's interesting. I've just listened to you, Pete, asking a question. Did you seek fame on one of your podcasts? And last Saturday, like we had this big party, and it's the first time I've seen most of the Propeller, which was our big moment of fame, I suppose. The first time I've seen everybody for about 10 years, and they were all at this 50th birthday. And, this younger guy came up and said, Tony, do you still want to be famous? You always wanted to be famous. And I said, no, I think not. I mean, the thing about in the old days is that I kind of craved audience fame and craved the audience's responses, and my role was the fool. So I was the connection between, for the company, I kind of always represented the connection with the audience. And the director, Edward Hall, who's now at Chicago Shakespeare Theatre, actually, he always said, Tony, you can do what you like. I let Tony do what he wants, because he is the key to our connection with the audience. So in a way, I almost overplayed that role. So I would be more interested in how I was relating to the audience than how I was relating to the other people on the stage, which meant that sometimes I would lose the connection with everybody else. But in terms of how you connect with the audience, the first thing is you kind of make sure your lighting designer understands that you have to see the whites of their eyes, because and this whole kind of actory style, this old school, I mean, it's interesting you talk, now it's completely changed, and I kind of straddle both, I think, because I was old school in terms of technique, but new school in terms of a kind of radical approach to dealing with an audience, that you throw the script wherever it needs to go and you play in the moment, very much like a singer-song, like a professional musician, I think, in their connection with the audience. There's no fourth wall for the fool. So they are literally talking to the audience in that moment. And I think that I always needed to see their faces. I needed to speak to individuals. I need to try, and that kind of thing where you go, it's almost instinctive that you kind of understand who they are and how they may respond. You have to predict that that some people are going to enjoy being provoked and bullied and prodded, and some people are going to be frightened of that. So you're a bit shy, you're a bit gentler with the ones that look timid, and you're a bit bolder with the ones that look a bit more, dare I say it, macho and testosterone. But then there are others that look a little like they've dressed quite conservatively. You're just a bit gentle and you tease it out of them. So you have to see them. So I used to say to the LX guys, I say, you've got to show me the whites of their eyes. It's no use you shining all those lights on stage so that I see a black hole, because that ain't going to work.
Yeah.
It sounds like you come from clowning. Did you study clown? Uh-oh, you're shaking your head. Did I hit a nerve?
The thing is, I think the key to me as a person, as a performer, is that I don't really fit anywhere. And the thing is that when I joined Propeller, that's the key to a lot of artists, isn't it? And I'm writing this, I'm performing this one-person show, or rehearsing it, and I'm rewriting it today, actually. And it's about... Is
this Man in the Rain?
Yeah, I've written it on an MA script writing course, and they all said, oh, come on, you need to write for yourself because we've seen you in Propeller, or we want you to relaunch yourself. So I've written it for myself, but I didn't know what I was writing. But I think it's about the neuroses of a performer, and whether we perform to heal ourselves or to heal the audience. And
we talk about this all the time.
Oh, yeah.
The thing is, it's also to do with entertaining, because
right.
Do they separate themselves? Is it therapy or is it entertainment? No, it's a kind of shared healing through entertainment, and healing is joyful as well as painful. But I think it's about bringing a vulnerable self to a performance space and sharing that vulnerability with an audience so that they're able to open their vulnerabilities, and there's a kind of coming together of a sort of opening up of our protectors, and becoming for that moment sort of letting go and sort of crying, laughing and living in a way that sometimes we hold back from, because we have to present a public face. So what we're doing is stripping ourselves to a private. So it's public. It's Meisner used to say this all the time. It's being private in public. And that's what I'm trying to do now. And I'd say the difference between me as a performer with Propeller, when there was more fame and more sort of bigger audiences and more at stake, was that I was kind of trying to perform my way to fame. And now what I'd say is I want to let go of the performance and sort of open myself out to the possibilities of finding a new way of performing.
But sometimes fame is the thing that allows an artist to go in that direction.
Yeah, that's what you say. You said you want it gives you opportunity. I think, yeah, I mean, of course it does. And my play's also about jealousy and about other actors that I've acted with doing better than me and how much it tortured me and how you've got to let go of that and just be you. But I think that opportunity, it's diminished over here, and I think with you in America, that the opportunity for theatre actors is shrinking massively because post-pandemic people aren't going to the theatre. It's costing a lot more money, and so I live on a reputation rather than work now. What I want is the opportunity to create, and I can do that more if people want me to create more, if people know who I am. But I would say that for me, it's safer for me to be less well known now, because it means I can go in directions they don't expect me to go in. So when I first put this play on, all the Propeller guys and the people that had seen me in Propeller were going, "It's not like you, Tony. What are you doing? You're not performative anymore." It almost felt like it was a different person. So I just think that it allows you to, when you become obscure, it does allow you to reinvent yourself and not be put into the box people expect. I've heard of Michael Sheen, and I mean, to name drop, but Michael Sheen and other actors saying in rehearsals that I've been in and my friends have been in, "Don't give me any notes, please, because I'll only ask for them, because I do what I do, but I don't want you to throw me off that. I want to do what is expected of me and what I expect of myself. Therefore, I'm not going to reinvent myself because there's too much at stake," is the subtext to that. So what I'd say, Pete, is I think that I want a lot of people to come to my play, and I want it to generate a buzz that allows me to take it on a tour around UK and then around the world. But aside from that, I'd rather that people saw it as a play by someone they'd never seen or heard of before.
So you're debuting it at the Edinburgh Festival Fringe, I'm assuming.
It's not at Edinburgh. It's, yeah, very funny. I mean, the thing about Edinburgh, I mean, I've played there post-Propeller, and there's an edge about it, isn't there? There's an edge about Edinburgh, about making sure you get the audiences. The competition of it is intense. But I'm doing it in the local theatre that is starting to get a name for itself. But I know enough people. So by just using my WhatsApp 2,000 actor friends, if I just do, I mean, it takes about 4 days and a sore thumb. But if I can send individual little notes I'm on, they'll come. And so I'm starting small in order to go a bit bigger. We were like the company of misfits. We were all people that had just failed to become TV stars or film stars when we were in our 20s. And we'd all got to about 30. And he went around all these fringe venues and plucked these oddballs and brought them into one company. And then we had a kind of second chance, a second coming. And then we were hyped by it all. And it created great work, but we also developed a sense that we wanted it forever. And we wanted to hold on to this glory. Yes. And then the company was all male, so it was the wrong climate. It was a sexist, misogynist setup, which I don't have a particular strong view about. I thought it was the work, not that we were one gender. And then what happened eventually is we were out of favour, we dropped away, and everyone went their separate ways. And we lost the sheen of that company, so we had to fall back on the fact that we were no longer Propeller. And, people now, only the oldies remember us.
Have you thought about putting another company together that would be obviously not all male, but another Shakespeare company together?
Well, I think that's what Ed's trying to do in Chicago now.
Yeah, but not him. You guys.
No, I know. Well, we have. Various members of us have tried to, but we have found it difficult to do that. Because the moment there's a whiff of it being a Propeller remake, there's all sorts of people saying, no, you can't do that, because I still want Propeller to have the possibility of reuniting. It'd be like, the Rolling Stones wanted to stay on. So I think Jonathan Spottiswoode, Jonathan Spottiswoode, is that his name?
Spottiswoode.
Yeah, so he was talking about being a boat in a dry harbour, waiting to produce again. And I think that some people to do with the old Propeller are still thinking we'll get back together one day. But we, in the meantime, I have thought about reinventing myself artistically, and I've done that in colleges, at universities, because it's easier for me, because people employ me to work with students. So I've done it that way. But it's just the very beginning now. I'm doing it on my own because it's cheaper. And then when I've finished doing this one-person play, I've got a two-hander play that I'm going to direct, not be in. But in terms of the climate for a big company, it would have to be mixed. It would have to be diverse. It would have to have a kind of USP of our time, and theatre is not, and it's in TV where we're getting these ensembles in long form. It's film where the money is, and the theatre's very strapped at the moment. So it'd have to be a massive risk, and there'd have to be a lot of us to do it, I think.
Tony, we talk a lot on this podcast about collaboration. I'm curious if you are collaborating with someone at this stage of the game in your solo show.
Yeah, I'm the director is my partner, Caroline.
How did you find that?
we nearly. It was really funny because there were moments when Caroline would say, "I'm leaving. I'm not doing it anymore, Tony. I'm off. If you're going to talk to me like that, that's it." And
you don't know if it's the project or the relationship, right?
But there were many times when I thought, "Oh no, I've lost my director," and then when I get home, I might have lost my partner. But I think that, but other times it works quite well. I mean, she's doing quite well as an actress on TV and on voiceovers, and she's probably in a better position now as an actor than I am now, if you like, in terms of profile. But she's seen me for many years, and so she's very complimentary about me. So I think she believes in me, and it's great. Because you've got someone that knows you warts and all and believes in your ability as an actor.
And you're used to being vulnerable with your partner, and that's what you're being in this show.
And the play is all about my life. So it's about a generational trauma through families. And so she knows all about that in her own family and mine as well. So she's sort of encouraging me to be more and more vulnerable and go deeper and deeper and deeper.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. So the difficulty is marrying the connection with the. You see, this is where I disagree with Grotowski. Him saying that the play is just a vehicle. It's not really. The play is everything. So that the song is everything. The content of what I've written is everything. The content of what Shakespeare's written is everything. It's what you are a conduit, because there's a lack of self-consciousness when you give yourself up to the world of the play or the world of the song. It's a conduit for you to be you. So what I'm saying is that in order to connect with the subject matter of my play, that's what I have to be kind of inside. But at the same time, I've got to be mindful of how the audience connects with that. So there's got to be a kind of joy and release. It can't be one horrible dark night of the soul.
It can't be a complete self-indulgent
therapy session.
Exactly. So it has to be something where they go, "Oh God, that reminds me of us. That reminds me of my child. That reminds me of my father." So that means that I have to tread lightly and trippingly and sort of honestly, but I mustn't avoid the difficulty of doing that. And so one of my old Propeller mates saw the first show and said, "Tony, when you used to tell us these stories, you were laughing your head off. It was the most horrific trauma, but we were in stitches. We
Tears.
Were finding it hilarious." Right. And he said, when you were doing some of those moments in the play, you were kind of telling me what to think.
Ooh. Good note.
You were telling me what to think rather than allowing me to enjoy it on my own terms. So this is the key: is to be open and to go into the world that you're in, but to trip through it in the way we do as people, trip through it quite lightly and with a sense of survival and a sense of nobility in kind of finding the joy despite the pain.
Absolutely.
I had a voice lesson about a month ago, and we were working on a song, and he stopped me and he said, "I just want you, the whole time you're singing this, to just nod your head yes." And the entire time I did it, it just brought out the yes. in everything.
Yeah.
And I realized at that moment, I was like, wow, I'm just I'm doing this inside out. And I think this is why I flipped over you when I saw you do with Propeller, where everything was a yes. You know, it was so engaging, even the most complex moments. And I think that that is what makes it, is able to bring in an audience more while you're digging in and going through these truths. It doesn't mean you don't get real, but I do think that really helps an audience come to terms with what they're dealing with in those moments as well.
It also reminds me of when I was, strangely enough, writing a one-person show about my experience writing a West End musical that was not well received. And,
Tony might have seen it. Tell him the name of it.
Desperately Seeking Susan.
Yeah.
And how the first draft of it was just very sad and angry and upsetting to hear me tell this story of, all of the hopes and dreams that we had, especially me, and then, how it all went wrong. And I knew something wasn't right about it as a solo show, which I planned to debut in Edinburgh. I brought it to my comedy guru, Steve Kaplan in Los Angeles, who took a look at it and said, yeah, the problem is you're writing this from the point of view of who you are now. You're not writing it from the person you were then, who was optimistic, clueless.
Yeah.
That's the clown, right? The clown is completely unable to achieve something. They don't have the skills to achieve what they want to achieve. That's who I was then. So I went back and rewrote this whole darn thing and turned it into an absolute riotous comedy. And when you talk about how the people in your company are like, when you told this story, you were laughing. It also reminds me about how once the show was coming together, how the director, John Clancy, who had lots of great successes in Edinburgh, would say, you got to talk like you're telling somebody at a pub. You can't say it. You can't deliver it like you're talking to 100 strangers in a dark room. And that's when I started saying, all right, I need the lights to be up in the house so I can see people. And it changed everything about me as a writer and as a performer, where you're always kind of finding that optimism despite, the hardships that come along the way. I think so many solo shows are just a list of hardships.
Yep.
And we don't see the optimism. So what's the point of me seeing your show if it's not going to fill me with some kind of hope?
Yeah, I mean, it, like everything in art and crafts, is the opposites coexist, don't they? So the moment we say that, we know that, the moment we're going, we've got to be fun, we've got to be taught. We also know that we've got to not be flippant. And the moment we're sort of scraggled in our dark night of being older and feeling a failure, that we've got to remember, there's a second coming, a second childishness around the corner. The thing is that, this is what my play's about this, basically. So basically, after pandemic, there was a funeral for a director who'd passed away just after the pandemic. And they asked me if I, as a Propeller's sort of a member of Propeller, to do a Shakespeare speech at the funeral, at the memorial. And I did All the World's a Stage. That's what they asked me to do. And as I got through to the sort of last scene of all is Second Childishness and Mere Oblivion, I sort of looked at his picture and I sort of started, I couldn't carry on, and I was sort of crying and sort of overly emotional and unable to get to the end. I did get to the end. But I was thinking, why did that happen? Because if I'm totally honest, I did 2 shows with this director. I hardly knew him. And, and they weren't the most pleasant experience either. And so I was like, what is that about? And then I realized it was sort of about the death of my own mother, and also in a way about the feeling of no longer having Propeller, like the death of the company. And I thought, this is interesting. So the play is set at my father's memorial, and I'm about to deliver All the World's a Stage, and I start with the infant mewling and puking in my mother's arms, and I can't carry on. And so my mother enters my spirit and tells me to start at the beginning, and I start with myself being cradled by my own mother as a baby. And then it becomes really about seeking the approval of your parents as an actor, as a person and an actor, and then having to come to terms with, why do I do it now? So the sort of whole full circle is that at the end of this whole evening is that he's able to deliver the whole speech, this time kind of for the good of having understood what the speech is.
Yeah.
But I think what's interesting is that the danger with mine is that it's a catalogue of trauma.
Right.
But because as a performer, I'm quite naturally funny, like you're talking about the clown. I've been asked to be a clown in a lot of situations as a performer. And so it means that sometimes it's funny just in spite of itself. And so
Yeah.
it's just tripping that line. But the interesting thing is that I got, after Propeller, or even while Propeller was going on, I got clowny people would ask me to be in their clowny shows.
Of course.
And but Hideki Noda in Tokyo would say, come on, be in my clown show. We'd go to Tokyo and say, now I want you to walk across the stage, using this no theatre technique, and I just couldn't do any of the clowny things that I was supposed to be doing. And I had to say, I don't really know what clowning is. I am me. And he said, just be you.
It's so innate.
So I think the thing is that and Gaulier, when I worked with Gaulier, he said, you're too serious, you're too intense, you're doing it like Robert De Niro.
Wait, who's Gaulier?
Philippe Gaulier from Lecoq. He's a French clown who's famous across Europe for being the father of clowning.
Ah.
And when I worked with him, I couldn't get on with him because he wanted me to be sillier and he wanted me to be less intense and less Robert De Niro. But the thing is, I always think I'm being Robert De Niro and people laugh. So I think that's fine. I think it's all fine. But I think we have to, as clowns and as performers, we have to say yes all the time. But we also have to say, yes, I have to give of the true, authentic me.
Absolutely.
And I've reached a point in my play where I do this Joker Joaquin Phoenix sort of panto dame. I played the panto dame after my mother died. It's the RuPaul man dressed as a woman. Drag, yes, drag. And I played it, and everyone said, "Oh, you'd be a great dame." And I did it in Doncaster. I absolutely hated it. I got arrested for punching a train guard, which I didn't do. And then in the sort of the court report, it said he had false eyelashes and nail varnish and dyed
You're
hair.
a threat.
And that was because I'd just come off the stage. But the thing is that I hated the whole experience. I suppose, what is my point here? That I suppose my point is that, in the play, I've recreated that. And I end up raging at the audience. And then I'm going, it never works, that bit. It never works. And it's because I'm being too angry and I'm being too and like, I hate you. In fact, the last line is, I hate him. And it's not really about hating my father at that point. It's about kind of loving him. So I've had to rewrite it this afternoon. And it's about what is more authentic than this kind of, macho, I'm a troubled clown. I'm a Joaquin Phoenix. It's not that. It's got to be something more honest and going, look, I have to tell you the truth. I feel that I've lost my way. This is me like 2 or 3 years ago. I feel that Propeller died and I died with it. And now Johnny Flynn and Andy Serkis are all stars. And where am I? So the thing is, I've got to find the kind of the humor and the sort of the sweetness in the performer that is kind of going, it's just me now. I've got to start again. I don't know how to, but it's as long as I stay open, it's still going to be fun.
Yeah.
Let's go back, because you started talking about being swaddled by your mom. What happened after that? You went to school and you kind of stumbled into the arts. Like, how did you wind up? Yeah. How did you wind up? I don't know, realizing that you were good at Shakespeare or theater or anything. How did it start?
I think, I tried to escape my parents because it was such a strong idea that life is won or lost in academia. They'd both been working class and had got in England, there was this kind of social mobility experiment where you passed the 11 plus and you got into grammar school, and the grammar school pushed all these working class kids towards university, and they got exhibitions to go to Cambridge. They got paid to go to Cambridge as the 1950s social mobility experiment. So for them, going to Cambridge and doing well at school was the answer to everything. But obviously that that was just too oppressive for me because I wasn't academic. I was a bit dyslexic. I was really out. I was hyperactive. So I had this kind of anxiety that only really relaxed itself when I was really exhausted. So I was hugely energized. So I had to do things. So I did football. I was a really good footballer. And then I went from sport into, by accident, stumbled into playing in musical theatre at school because I was a beautiful treble. Because I did everything I could to get away from home. It was stifling. So I went to church choir, and then I ended up being a beautiful treble. And so I ended up playing the leads in school musicals. Then my voice broke, and that's in the play. That kind of my singing voice, that finished. Right. But I suppose I was trying to run away from the idea of the head, the idea that everything is about analysis. You can solve everything by arguing intellectually, and I couldn't solve anything doing that. So I had to find the visceral way through life. So I stumbled into the visceral way of forming. That's why theatre was where I began, and why in telly I got all confused because it was about holding your mark and making sure the camera was here. So don't go, what are you doing, Tony? You've moved out of shot. Sorry. I had a kind of neurodiversity about being told what to do. So everything I do is kind of idiot savant. Is it called that? Yeah. It's just something that happens to me and I can't control it. That's my performing. That's what I do.
So when did you actually start studying?
I got into sports college, and then at the last minute, I was in Coco in the Mikado by Gilbert and Sullivan, and I loved it so much. I decided I didn't want to do football. I wanted to be an actor. So at the last minute, I got into university to do geography, and as soon as I got there, I was in the musical, and I swapped my degree to theatre studies. I finished that, and then I got into drama school. I went. I was at university with Andy Serkis, funnily enough, and we were best friends. So we had this dream that we were going to make it our way as actors together, and we did for a while. And then Andy became stratospheric. Anyway, then I joined Propeller. So I suppose I went to drama school. I fiddled about. Ed Hall saw me play a tiny part in a small theatre and gave me a role in Propeller, and that took off.
Amazing.
Yeah.
But you never really wanted to do a lot of film and television, or did you?
I mean, now, yes, probably. I mean, I'm a different person.
I could see you in television.
I mean, then, like, a lot of young actors here in New York are, I'm going to do a couple of off-Broadway shows, and then I'll get discovered, and I'll be able to do what I really want to do, which is be a Hollywood actor. I've never had that desire. Did you have any of that desire, or did you just really felt best on stage? Because your audience is alive.
I mean, I suppose I joined Propeller. Propeller was Shakespeare. There's a thing about the Shakespeare I was able to act this archaic language in a way that it sounded of today. Mm-hmm. So I think it is a kind of neurodiversity. I've always had a kind of attachment to poetry in a way as if it's happening right now. You couldn't say that I speak fairly rationally. So I think what I'm trying to say really is that I found a place as a performer, as an eccentric, oddball performer. And then I got discovered by a huge agent who then threw me into the most amazing TV jobs. Even in America, I had an American manager. I got put up for God knows how many amazing TV series, and I just didn't get any of them. And the thing is that I did do tiny bits, but I wasn't equipped to do TV auditions because I'd only ever known one director, one company. And, I'd known a way of creating, whereas you throw yourself into a tiny room and with musical instruments, singing and all kinds of crazy guys, and you just create. And that just isn't the way of the world of a TV job. And so I never got anywhere, and he dropped me. But now I had therapy for many years, left acting before it left me after Propeller. And I've gone through this therapy, and I've sort of come out the other side, and I think I'd be great on telly now.
Yeah, I agree. You look really good on this computer screen right now. You're like, that's somebody.
But I also just think with your chops and your ability, it would be, there's so many things when I was thinking of questions I wanted to ask you, I jokingly was asking, like, could you be on Game of Thrones or Harry Potter? Like, I could so see you on all of that with your, everything that you do and everything I've seen you do. I just can't imagine why you haven't been cast in that, but I understand it through this conversation. But I feel like that's something you would be a natural for, but it's not so natural. I think that's what we're learning.
It's also not natural to know how to audition for that stuff.
Absolutely.
Because it's only like the past 15 years that universities are offering courses in how to audition. You know, that's the first step, right?
Yeah, Peter Hall used to say you need a talent for having a talent. And I always thought I didn't have that talent for having the talent. And I think I'm learning it. And I think you're never too old to learn these tricks. My partner, when we do like yesterday, we had a rehearsal and she sort of went, "Why aren't you doing it, Tony? Why aren't you doing it?" And I think I will. I mean, this is my, I think there's a second coming around the corner. Yeah. And it's, now I could do it. But the thing is that all actors and I'm sure it's the same for music as well. The horrendous idea of being rejected. And I know that every brilliant musician's been rejected 20 times, but it's not great for the soul. And the thing is that I avoided the rejection. I thought I'm going to leave acting before it leaves me. And then, of course, I then put all my energy into students who then became stratospheric, which is great. But then I'm thinking, no, I need to put the energy back in myself. And now I think I've just got to be stronger. And the thing is, the older you get, the more philosophical you get, and the more you think, I've got maybe 10 years. Come on, 10 more years. And I think that you feel, but I think that you feel, come on, this could be a new beginning. When Propeller finished, I thought, oh God, I hope that every artist doesn't have one moment in their life. This idea, I was in Harry Potter and now look at me. I was a child star, now look at me. I was Radiohead, now look at me. I mean, I'm not saying they're not Radiohead anymore, but the thing is that I don't want it to be just Propeller.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that there'll be a journey towards TV and film, and probably playing the sort of odd, interesting, all kinds of stuff. I can do that kind of the stuff that's otherworldly. In fact, that I sent you a story I read, but the woman that told me to read said most people can't do this thing where you go into another world that's kind of either of the imagination, or that it's gothic, or it's the Game of Thrones, or it's a world, an imaginary landscape that is full of eccentricity and minute sort of humanity.
I also think that, just going back to coming out after Propeller, and then we had the pandemic, and also being 62, like being older, I think it's, and also the landscape right now with what's going on around the world, that social media is changing everything so fast. There's so much going on so fast. I think as we age, and we've been sort of holding on to the things that we've done in the past, I think just being open to whatever it is out there can be challenging, but also can be really exciting. I think it's all, like, even just the fact that Pete and I are doing a podcast, like, it's not anything that I ever thought of. And I think actually it was because of the pandemic, because I listened to so many podcasts during the pandemic. All of a sudden I'm like, do a podcast. And I think that you just don't know what's around the corner. And when you have the talent that you do, I mean, I said this to Pete earlier, there are 3 actors that I have seen in my lifetime that have just stopped me dead in my tracks. Mark Rylance on Broadway. He was a couple of things he did. Cole Escola. Did I say that right? And you. I remember seeing you in Propeller at BAM when I went with Daniel. And I just was riveted. And it takes a certain kind of actor for me to stay completely engaged the entire time. And every time you were on that stage, I just couldn't take my eyes off of you. And that is a talent that is rare. And I think that, that is something that is really hard, and it can get very weighty on us, right? Knowing that you have that talent, it has to be there. It's crazy.
But also a likability. Like, you just
absolutely.
have, I mean, I've just met you an hour ago, right? But you have like an openness, and I dare say a vulnerability that I normally would not expect from a Brit. That is so refreshing.
I remember when we first played BAM, and I went, wow, America, people can be who they want to be. I mean, I know that there's Trump and what have you, but in the kind of New York, East Coast artistic community, it felt that it was cool to be different.
Totally.
And in Britain, it wasn't. At that time, it wasn't. So I was really refreshed by that. But the interesting about Mark Rylance is he came to see Propeller, and he sent me a massively long letter about my performance in Propeller, and was like really, really forensic about it. And because of that, sort of kept bringing me to the Globe to try and be in the Globe. And he kept presenting me.
I love that.
He kept presenting me to all the other directors, and none of them cast me.
Not yet.
What was interesting about him is the way he talked about acting and the way he talked about my performance. I thought, I totally get it where he's coming from. It was all about this sort of the vulnerability, and don't get this moment was perfect, but this moment you were stuck in an old shell of what I'd seen you do before, and it was all about don't ever feel comfortable. He was sort of saying always be in the moment, and when you feel scared and uncomfortable and what am I going to do next, that's the right moment, that's the right way to be. So he was saying, we all have these yin and yang, I think, don't we? And I think for me it's that my default is to sometimes so overwhelming that to be an artist, this is so overwhelming that I can't do it anymore, and I lock down, and so then I'll just do, okay, I can get through this, I'll do it on technique. But it doesn't really work for me because I'm just not one of those actors that can do that. So it has to be that I have to live through it. I'm not saying that Mark Rylance says that all the time, but he has a kind of a uniqueness. I agree that about Mark Rylance, and also his connection with the audience is incredible. And I noticed about him that he's quite quiet when he's at his most connected to the audience. It's quite he brings them to him.
Yes.
So
absolutely.
Pete, you're talking about pushing, this idea of pushing. And if we're going to talk about generalizations about UK and America, that I think a tendency for some of the American theatre actors is to push a bit hard, is to show off too much, or to be
100%.
To be too brazenly macho, or to be
1000%.
too brazenly sexy.
Yep.
It's too in your face, and we're the opposite.
Yep.
We're too shy, and I'm going. You're on the fucking stage. Sorry, swearing. You're on the stage. You're there because the others can't be there because they're. So don't be shy. Just take it with all the joy that can. You're there for them. You mustn't be repressed. You mustn't be self-conscious.
You really nailed the main problem with the musical comedy that I wrote that was being done for the first time ever by a British cast.
Oh, wow.
I mean, that's it, right?
Yeah.
I write like Neil Simon, right?
Yeah.
I write very broadly. People say very broad things. I mean, you'd think I was Jewish the way I write. But I guess because I grew up in Queens on Long Island, that would make sense. And I was constantly questioning the director.
Yeah.
With why is this moment not bigger? Why? It's a musical comedy. Everything has to be bigger. Weirdly, I was just telling Nancy I'm going to see The Hills of California next week because Leanne Best, whose name has come up on this podcast before, actually, she was the last person we cast. It was for the Laurie Metcalf role, who was, she was on Roseanne. She's a Chicago actor, and she had to play this nagging Jewish sister-in-law who was in everybody's face, and everybody we cast just did not do it. This Scouser came in with this amazing accent, all the brashness, which I guess is also part of her background as well. Now I'm going to see her in her first Broadway show.
Yeah, I mean, she is that kind of actor. But also, it's the nuances of UK, that if you're from Liverpool, then you're brassy, and then you're not shy because you're out there. Everyone, a spade is a spade, and I live life to the full, whatever I have. And then you come down to the sort of suburbs of London, and everyone's going, no, I'm no, after you. And it's a kind of fake politeness. But I think that, and then in our British theatre has been beset with a kind of repression, and then American theatre has been beset with a kind of overly presented approach.
Yeah.
So I think it's getting the middle, and I think that the actress you've just described is one that can do that.
It's also interesting how like American stories, especially in musical theater, do so much better over there than they do here. I mean, Mean Girls.
Yeah,
that lasted like no time at all here, and it's being revived 100 times on the West End. 9 to 5. Big brashy musical here, flopped. There, they can't get enough of it. It's just it's amazing how the British culture accepts the over-the-topness of American characters. And I guess it's because maybe there's a starvation for being able to do that themselves. Did I just figure something out? Or was that a generalization? What did I just do there?
No, we can't do that. So look, here's an interesting one. Tammy Faye has gone to Broadway and the audience response is terrible at the moment. Okay, so every day they're changing it. Tammy Faye
started over there.
It started over here. Dare I say it? I'm not surprised it's struggling over there. We don't do musical comedy very well, and we don't do being fearlessly unafraid to be to show off. So that's the problem, isn't it? Is an issue.
You do storytelling better than we do.
Yeah,
I really think so. I think on stage, in the world of theater, your directors and actors and designers come from a place of let's serve the story more than, I hate to say, American actors and directors and designers, which I think come from more of a place of like, how can my expression be seen?
Yeah, of course, and that's but you've had the film industry for years, haven't you? And that's the way in for your guys, and for us, it used to be that we needed to be employed by the National Theatre and the RSC and what have you.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Tony. Hey, thanks for checking this out. Links to today's guest can be found in the show notes.
Don't forget to subscribe, like us, rate us, and tell all your friends about arts and craft.